So this is our cation column. It's the orange one. And our anion column is the brownish yellowy one. And just notice how our water level is just above the resin, so the top of the resin never gets dry. And you want to make sure you do that throughout the whole lab. Just make sure your solution level is always just above the top of the resin. So we're going to start at section C, assuming that you've been able to wash the columns and prepare the mixture that's going to go through the solution in section B, where it outlines your weighing out of the sample and dissolving it in acid and checking the pH. So we've measured out 10 milliliters of our mixture, and we're going to add that to our cation column and let it run through. Then you can open the column and let it run through, and then keep adding 10 milliliter portions of distilled water. And you're going to add 4 of those. So you'll have an eluate of about 50 milliliters at the end. So in step 3, our EC, you'll have about 50 milliliters, and you want to measure out 10 milliliters of that and add that to your anion column. And once again, let that run through, adding 4 10 milliliter portions of distilled water. So your eluate from that is about 50 mLs again. So to test the pH of your EC and your EA, we take pH paper and just drop a little bit of your solution onto the pH paper. So as we can see, our EC is acidic, which makes sense because the hydrogen atoms have come out with the eluate because they didn't bind to the resin in the column. And knowing that, we should assume that our EA is going to be neutral because the hydrogen atoms left in the EC would have bound to the resin. So we can test the pH of our EC, or EA. And we'll notice that the pH of our EA, once I can get it off my fingers, we'll notice that the pH of our EA is about 6 or 7, which is neutral. So in part D, you're going to elute your cations from your cation column. And you have 2 cations in your column. You have the ones that have a stronger affinity for the column bound to the top, and the ones that have a lower affinity for the column bound to the bottom. So we want to elute the ones with a lower affinity first, so we add a solution of 1 molar HCl and let it run through the column. In section D, you're going to start with the elution of your cations from your cation column. And you have 2 different cations in your column. Cations that have a stronger affinity for the column are bound to the top, and cations with a lower affinity for the column are bound to the bottom. So we're going to elute the ions with a lower affinity first by adding a solution of 1 molar HCl. And you're going to add 4 10 milliliter increments of 1 molar HCl to elute your lessly bound ions, and you're going to get a solution that looks something like this. So this is our sodium ion solution. It's a colorless solution, and sodium has a charge of +1, which is less than the other cation, which is copper, which has a charge of +2, and that's why it came out with the 1 molar HCl. Now to elute the copper ion, we add a solution of 3 molar HCl, and we end up with our copper ions in solution. They're a greenish blue in color. And once again, they came out with a stronger acid because they had a higher affinity for the column. In section D, we're going to elute our anions. So once again, we're going to apply the same principles, adding a less concentrated base to elute our first anion, which has less of an affinity for the column, and then we'll add a stronger base to elute our second ion. So we're first going to put 4 10 ml portions of 0.2 molar ammonia into our column and elute our first anion, which is going to be chlorine. It's colorless and it has a -1 charge, so it has a less affinity for the column than does chromate, which is our second anion. And to elute our second anion, we'll add a 1 molar solution of ammonia and get our chromate in solution, which is a yellowy green in color. And it has a -2 charge, which is a stronger affinity for the column and thus required a stronger base to elute. So just to recap your experiment, once your columns are washed and ready for use, you're going to take your first mixture and pour it into your cation column and let it run through with 40 milliliters of distilled water. And that's going to end up being your EC, which should be acidic. Then you'll take 10 milliliters of your EC and pour it into your anion column along with 40 milliliters of water as well. And you'll get your EA, which should be neutral. Once that's done, you want to elute your cations and anions that have been bound to the resin in the column. So to elute your cations, you're going to start by adding a 1 molar solution of HCl to your cation column to elute your sodium ions, which are colorless, in solution. Then you're going to add 3 molar HCl to your cation column to elute your copper ions, which are bluish-green in solution. Next, to elute your anions, you're going to add a 0.02 molar solution of ammonia to elute your chlorine ions, which are colorless in solution. And then to elute your chromate ions, you're going to add a 1 molar solution of ammonia, and you'll end up with a solution of chromate ions, which are a yellowy green in color.